physician. But I learned the good, the bad, the ugly of medicine, and it was good, a good experience. But after about 10 years of basically building this huge practice for, I love capitalism, man. I'm a big supporter. I'm not a socialist, but I realized that I was closer to 40 than I was to 30. That I was like, you know what, I need to. If I don't do it now, I'm not gonna do it. So I jumped off the cliff, and there was no parachute. I mean, I knew that I wanted to do something for myself, and at the time, I left this thriving, huge practice, and all my buddies were like, "Man, are you crazy? Like, are you? I mean, you need." Yeah, literally, he refused my resignation letter because there were several partners in the group, and I was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, producer in that practice. And so when I left, it was a big void. Yeah. And basically handed over practice to a young guy and said, "Hey, man, I'm walking away." Yeah. So it took a lot of guts, but I learned a lot. I mastered my craft in those 10 years. At least as a physician, knew what it took and what really connects with people and how to connect with people. There's an art and science to medicine, and I felt like I knew both, but I didn't have a whole lot of business acumen, but I knew that I needed to do something for myself. Yeah. So.
Welcome to Winning Strategies Playbook, the podcast where we welcome business leaders, CEOs, and industry experts to discuss the rise to the top, building wealth, and real estate insights. Here's your host, Jeremy Spann.
Rudy Herrera.
Yes, sir.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, man. It's been a heck of a day for you, I bet.
Yeah.
Doing well.
Doing well.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
Dr. Rudy Herrera. I got to say, for someone that's been through a gajillion years of school to become a doctor, you're one of the most humble, laid-back doctors I've ever met in my life.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that quite a bit. Yeah, no, I think humility is important. It's a good virtue, I guess. Yeah.
Well, that's what makes it really good is you and I have partnered up because that's something I am trying to work on is humility, right?
Yeah. It's tough. The other things that, like patience is another, one of those things I need to work on. We're all broken, so to speak, but that's my fall. Not being impatient and not being patient with the process. Yeah. But some good learning obstacles. Paid my dummy tax with a lot of that stuff.
Well, I tell you, your work ethic and the amount that you work is impressive. I mean, you are a man on a mission. Yeah. And it's just, tell me about that. Well, I tell you what, before we jump into that, my father-in-law says that I have to start every one of these podcasts off with a joke.
Beautiful.
This one's perfect for you since you just got back from Mexico. What washes up on very small beaches?
Wow. Is this PG or
are we
Okay.
I mean, we don't have to be.
I wasn't sure.
Hey, this is a free country. We can say whatever we want.
I'm not sure.
The joke is PG.
Okay.
Now, our content may not be.
Okay. There's no bongs like Elon Musk and Joe Rogan. Okay. No, I don't know. Let's see. Jellyfish. I'm not sure.
Microwaves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
My father-in-law, when he said, you got to do this. And at first I was like, I'm not going to do it. But I wanted to, he's been such a great father-in-law and mentor that I wanted him to feel like he was a part of it. And then now it's just kind of become a thing.
Awesome. There's always a hook with these things.
Always, right?
Yeah.
Always. So work ethic, man, where does that drive come from?
Man, I'll be honest with you, man. I think it really comes from my mother, right? So she came over to the U.S. basically in her late 20s and had our family, and she had fourth grade education, and my dad also pretty much fourth grade education. And man, they hustled, they worked. She basically was she cleaned houses growing up. She cleaned houses, so I remember vividly early on. She had a little business, so she would clean. There was Mervyn's. I don't know if you remember Mervyn's. It's like a Bell's, and she would clean the department store early in the morning, and then clean houses during the day, and then at night she'd clean office buildings. So it was like, dude, and she worked pretty much 7 days a week. And then as we grew up, some of the houses that she would clean, there would be, my brother and I, we would cut the yard, and then it was just like, man, she would never stop working. And when she became a citizen, I remember I was in undergrad at the time, and when they take these fingerprints, right? It was like her hands were like totally demolished from all the chemicals that she was using. So there's hardly any fingerprints that she could get. But man, that work ethic is just like ingrained. Like I just, whenever I was in undergrad, doing organic chemistry or whatever, I'm like, sitting in a room, AC room, just, belly full and just kind of bitching about, having to study so much. Then I would think back, I'm like, man, my mom's cleaning houses from sunrise to sunset. So that just became second nature. It's like, hey, I got 2 arms and 2 feet. Let's hustle. Let's grow. And then secondly, as a resident, you used to work in 100-hour weeks. So when you as you progress through your training, you get more kind of a leadership quality or leadership role. And so you defer a lot of the scut work to the newer guys, the new docs. And so when I was working, 100-hour weeks, and then I would be off on the way, I'd kind of go through withdrawals. I'd be like, well, what do I do? It's like, so at one point, man, even as a resident, I had 3 jobs. Like I was moonlighting at the federal prison, I was moonlighting at the county jail, and then I was just as a resident. So I would basically, because you're really not earning a whole lot of money as a resident, man. You're earning like 20, 30,000, and you're like, you don't literally have to buy any food because you're at the hospital. You eat breakfast there, lunch and dinner. So it's like, so I was just, I don't know, man. It's just became second nature, and I think it's just a lot of muscle memory now. And now I'm, I'm always like my wife, even when we dated for 5 years, she really didn't know me, right? Because I was always doing something. And I paralleled a lot of my physical, mental fortitude to some of the physical fortitude. So when I was a resident, I've always wanted to do an Ironman. I did like 3 Ironmen. I did 2 Ironmen and 2.5 Ironman, and I got that out of my system. And I was always training. And then I started a new practice and committed to that, grown a super prosperous practice in 2008. And in 2018, I walked away from that practice. But I built it from scratch, and I was literally seeing 60, 70 patients a day. And
did you just say 60
to 70?
To 70?
And a busy day. Yeah, man, I would.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I had other, physician assistants help me with that, but I would typically take all, the complicated cases or needy patients and kind of get the older non-complicated patients to my mid-levels and what have you. But, so it's just second nature, man. I don't know if I have an off switch, but, man, I basically comes back to the, my mother's work ethic. Like, I can't complain, man. I get to work inside. I don't get to deal with anybody's crap, literally. But but yeah, it comes from her, man.
Man, so kind of going back a little bit, with your parents having, not very much education, at what point in your life did you say, I think I'm going to go to medical school, I'm going to go be a doctor? At what age do you think that?
Man, I think it maybe began in high school. I got a scholarship to go to a private school in San Antonio. And
which one?
Central Catholic.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember my senior year, I took an anatomy and physiology, and one of my classmates, it was like a big final. And he's like, "Hey man, why don't you come over? We can study together." And I remember going to his house. I'm like, "Dude, this is like a freaking mansion." I'm like, "Who lives here?" I was like, so the funny thing about this is an interesting story. So I remember studying at this guy's house. I'm like, "What does your dad do? Is he part of the cartel? What does he do?"
Was he a drug lord?
Yeah. And so we studied. He told me he was a physician and worked at the university, and really great guy. The irony was, interesting story with this is that 4 years later, I hadn't seen the guy. He went to A&M. I went to Texas, UT.
Yeah.
And there's a big, what they call white coat ceremony. The first day of medical school, you basically give you a white coat.
Okay.
And there's a big ceremony for that. And so you walk up to the medical school and you basically get a name tag. No one knows anybody. There's 200 brand new students. No one knows anybody. So I'm walking up to the table to check in. I turn to my right. It's the same guy. The same guy I had anatomy with.
And where was it? What medical school was it?
UT San Antonio.
UT San Antonio,
So he went to A&M. I went to Texas. We came back. We weren't tight, but it's an interesting story. I think he's an orthopedic surgeon here somewhere in the United States. But so I remember meeting him back, and we hung out. We laughed about that. And then his dad was still teaching at the university.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of got an idea. Maybe then I really didn't have a lot of confidence. Maybe I didn't really proclaim it or tell anybody. Maybe my dad. I shared my story, my kind of vision with my dad, and so I basically went to undergrad, and I was like, man, what do I want to do with my life? And I walked on at University of Texas, ran at the track on the track team, and did that for about 2.5 years. And I was like, man, I got to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And the reason I was kind of drew to the sciences was to kind of figure out how I could become a better runner. Like what do proteins do? What does ATP do? How do the cells work? And how do your muscles work? What is, that whole process. So that was always kind of like a piqued my interest. And then so I started taking some classes. And then I was like, if I really want to think about medicine, let me go volunteer. So I started volunteering at one of the community clinics in East Austin, mostly as an interpreter. So I was like interpreting for Spanish-speaking patients to the physicians, and I just volunteered for about a year, and then I got a job, and then I was like, you know what, I think I can do this. So I just committed to it, man. I just said tunnel-like vision. I said, I'm going to do this. And then graduated, and basically I graduated in that summer. At that time, you could only take the MCAT, which is like entrance exam, in April, and then once again in August. So I graduated in May, and I said, you know what? I'm going to just close myself in the room. So I would study pretty much all day that summer. I would wake up, do a Kaplan review course, and then basically from 8 to 4 or 5, and then from 5 to 7, I'd go work out. Go for. At the time, I had some buddies that we would run. I was a super big runner at the time, and we would meet, and then after workouts, I'd come home, shower, and do 100 questions every night, just practicing At the time, you had to do a physical sciences, biological sciences, and then you had a writing essay portion and a verbal reasoning section. So it's a bit complicated. It was an all-day exam. Yeah. So I was like, man, I've never been a good exam taker. So I was like, man, I gotta put the hours in. So I worked at that, and that summer I just committed and took the exam, and luckily got in and interviewed at all the schools in Texas, and then I wanted to stay back home and stayed in San Antonio.
Okay. So where did you do your residency at?
So I came up here to Fort Worth at JPS and did a family residency there, and then I did a sports fellowship, and then I did a pain fellowship after that. So 5 years of training, and then halfway into my fellowship, I got a phone call from one of the local guys in the area, and he's like, "Hey, I heard good things about you. Would like to hire you." And I was like, "Man, I so one good thing I'm going to share tonight is my gut with this first interview was not good. I turned the guy down, and I should have gone with my gut, but I didn't. I thought I was going to do something, but you're kind of going through this anxious part in your life, and should I stay? Should I leave? Should I get married? Should I not get married? Should I, what should I do? Should I, whatever. But, there is, in this process, I think that I did definitely learned a lot from this one gentleman, this other physician. But I learned the good, the bad, the ugly of medicine. And it was good, a good experience. But after about 10 years of basically building this huge practice for, I love capitalism, man. I'm a big supporter. I'm not a socialist, but, I realized that I was closer to 40 than I was to 30, that I was like, you know what, I need to, if I don't do it now, I'm not going to do it. So I jumped off the cliff, and there was no parachute. I mean, I knew that I wanted to do something for myself. And at the time I left this thriving, huge practice, and all my buddies were like, "Man, are you crazy? Like, are you, I mean, you need," literally he refused my resignation letter, because there were several partners in the group, and I was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, producer in that practice. And so when I left, it was a big void. Yeah. And basically handed over practice to a young guy and said, "Hey, man, I'm walking away." Yeah. So it took a lot of guts, but I learned a lot. I mastered my craft in those 10 years. At least as a physician, knew what it took and what really connects with people and how to connect with people. There's an art and science to medicine, and I felt like I knew both, but I didn't have a whole lot of business acumen, but I knew that I needed to do something for myself. Yeah. So,
man. So, and then just for the audience, what kind of medicine?
So I do interventional pain management. So manage chronic pain issues, whether it's weird stuff like phantom limb pain or just regular back pain. People with chronic back pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, any kind of musculoskeletal pain, cancer pain. So lots of different types of pain syndromes, weird stuff like CRPS, things like that. But man, I just, there's a void there, there's a need there. I think that anyways, I can go off on that. But but in that process, I started learning more about regenerative medicine, started doing a lot of regenerative medicine with some big pioneers in that industry over the last 3 or 4 years. Learned a lot from there, but I've got a thriving medical practice. I've got 3 primary care clinics I own, two pain practices I own, and I'm closing on 2 other primary care practices in the next 2 weeks here. So we'll have 5. And trying to grow that. And for me, it's like, right now, it's like, that's why I look at things is I'm trading my time for assets. So those assets can give me time back. Yeah. So like I'm buying these practices or building practices or real estate so that those assets will give me the freedom to really do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I mean, we all, we you know, that's how we connected, right?
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like for me, it's always been I have this general sense of where I want to go, but it's always like a series of mistakes. You're kind of falling forward, so to speak. That's my driver's license. Not my driver's license, but my driver's license plate says fall forward. You know, basically fall forward in the direction that you want to go. You're gonna mess up. You're gonna make mistakes, but as long as you can get up and kind of move in that direction, whether it's real estate, whether it's buying medical practices, whether it's mastering a certain technique or certain procedure, you just gotta do it, man. It's the only way you get it.
So, and this next statement is not intended to take away all the hard work and amazing things you've done, but really one of the fascinating things about you is I literally forget you're a doctor. Even though you've done all the work and education and millions of patients and all of this, when you and I connected, I was like, this guy's more of an entrepreneur than he is a doctor, right? And some people might say, well, doctors are entrepreneurs too, but doctors are good at many times doctoring, but not doing the business portion of it, right? So they hire people to do the business portion of it. But where your mindset is like, how do we take things, grow things, and make them profitable for the very element that you said is, time is a commodity we cannot buy more of. We can't get a refund on it once spent. And the only way to get more of that is to create an element that affords us more time to do one of a number of things, which is either grow more businesses, spend more time with family, or really something we want to do, right?
You know, I think, and be honest with you, man, it's like reinventing yourself. Like when you're not the same person when you were 20 or 30, right? For me, it was always about reaching my potential. Like whether it was doing an Ironman, like I didn't have a coach. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do, but it's, you swim 2.5 miles, you bike 112, and then you run a marathon, you know, all in one day. But I was like, you know what? I've never done that. Let me see if I can do that.
Yeah.
And I just did it.
What is that driver? Let me stop you there.
I don't know.
What is it that, because I don't know that any entrepreneur has really been able to answer this for me through all the recordings that we've done. It's like, what is that? Do you think it's just something that maybe you're born with, somewhere along the way, it just manifests inside of you, or what? It just becomes this thing that like, enough is never enough, right?
Man, I know it's, and man, I think that people that are not wired this way will never get it, right? People that like my wife, you know, I love her, but she's like, dude, when are you going to stop? Like when, like, I mean, I stopped the regenerative medicine. I registered for an online course at Rice University to do, learn about real estate, and, you know, up till 12 doing some homework and then trying to be up at 4:40 to do these things. I don't know, man. I don't know what, you know what? I can't explain it for everyone. I think maybe it's a chip on my shoulder. Yeah. Maybe, I'll be honest with you, like full transparency, maybe it's the I don't know, feeling inadequate and saying, Rudy, you know, and not that I need to prove myself to anyone. It's just saying like, dude, can I do it?
Isn't it funny with what you just said is I don't care about anybody else. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's not them that I'm running against. It's the one in the mirror.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think it's a series of reinventions, right? And so when I got in med school, let me just get through this day. It's like sometimes it's like drinking water out of a fire hydrant. Let me just get through this. So I finished that. I'm like, okay, what's next? What's the next mountain to climb? Well, let me do this fellowship. Oh, well, let me do another fellowship. Okay, well, let me, you know, do this. And let me build a practice, you know, huge practice. Yeah. And then and then who would walk away from that? At that point in my life, I was comfortably unhappy, right? And it wasn't just that I could do it, but I was like, there's got to be more to my life. And I think that it's just a constant search for like reaching and maximizing your potential. Like you're here and you want to be here. The delta is that's the potential. And that's really what, you know, I guess what motivates me. And my buddies are like, dude, what are you doing, man? Like, I don't even want to share stuff with people because if you share stuff with people, there's inevitably going to be hate. There's inevitably going to be hate. There's going to be like, dude, when's enough? You know, people that don't get it. You know, I'll share stuff with my wife, but my buddies are like, dude, why do you keep doing this? And there's going to be hate. So I prefer to be silent and move in silence.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at.
Haters are gonna hate, aren't they?
They're gonna hate.
They're gonna hate.
Like,
so Vincent Hancock, we got a recording this series with him, multiple gold medals in Olympics and world champion. I mean, this guy is the best skeet shooter on the planet. Like, there's no one better. And even when he went through his challenges of, you know, you're not always, like you said, you're going to land on your face, you're going to mess things up, or you're going to hit just like this crossroads or fork in the road, whatever you want to call it, right? And he said, man, I had people telling me, you're washed up, you might as well quit, and all that. And we get really annoyed when we hear that, right? Not because we believe it. We really don't believe any of it. We're like, what? No, it's just, you're saying this because of your own insecurities for whatever reason, and I don't want to hear your own insecurities.
Man, and there's so much, like, man, I've never shared this, right? Like, man, I've suffered with dyslexia, right? And it was like, I remember third grade, my teacher was like, you're not going to pass. And I was like, what the? Like, I was just walking to the restroom, and she pulls me over, and she says, you're not going to pass third grade. Yeah. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was, I just remember this lady, but I don't know. Maybe it's I don't know how to explain it, right? And it's not that like I said before, it's not that I need to bang my chest or proclaim to everyone, you know, look at my net worth or look at what I've accomplished, look at my diplomas. And man, it's just me, right? So I think that there's a lot of parallels with what has helped me kind of get strength. It was by running, right? Like there's a lot of solitude in doing a 20-mile run, or you know, and that paralleled into. Well, you know, if I can really do well at the state meet, then why can't I do well academically? And so I just sat down and said, I'm going to do it, and figure out a way to be persistent, and you know, that's kind of how it evolved, I think, for me.
You know, what's really interesting about our relationship is there's so many things that we share in similarities, right? And you and I've talked about them many, many times. We both are doing stuff together now, but we're both kind of, I don't know, because we've been burned so many times, right?
Yeah.
Where there's something that is to be said about guys like you and me, in that we've been given every reason never to trust another human being ever again. And anytime we've opened up that kimono, man, they just pulled out that dagger and just slayed it, right? But then you and I crossed paths, and it was like the shared experiences of that helped you and I forge a trust that's, you know, I know that it's one of the things, your trust in me is something that I get goosebumps just talking about it, is something I value, of just one of the biggest values, right? And that shared trust is growing up and not having the things that all other kids had. Growing up both being dyslexic. I mean, with me dropping out of high school at 17 and then not knowing how to read till I was 19, effectively at all. People are like, how'd you make it this far? Like, even when I was a detective, my dyslexia is so bad. Even when I was a detective with Fort Worth PD, my supervisor would have to review my warrants. Not because the probable cause wasn't there. It was because spell check didn't matter. Well, at that point, I was working the violent sex crimes unit. At that point, the suspect kicked open the door to the horse entered and penetrated her month with it, you know, and it like, why don't you use spell check? I was like, look, month and mouth, both of them look the same to me. Horse and it doesn't matter if there's a spell check, right? Yeah. And it's just, but like you know, talking about third grade and those insecurities that are bred there, that wasn't really the insecurities I was too much worried about everybody else, but that whole chasing it all the time, where since then you've gone to college, you went to medical school, you've done all these things, but yet it's that right there in your ear, right? And it was the same way for me, you know, going to TCU on a full academic scholarship, getting an MBA from TCU, one of the most recognized colleges for MBAs there is. And still, it's that noise in my ear of like, enough's never enough. And so, as you know, I've got this executive coach, Tony Ford, and when we were doing a recording with him, he said something that he may have said it before, but I just didn't listen or pay attention to it, but it made sense, is he said, you know, sharks have to always be moving. Just by physical design, if they are not moving, they don't breathe. They suffocate. Mm-hmm. And when he said that, and he goes, a lot of entrepreneurs are like this, and he said a lot of people that are designed like you and I are like this, is it's like, man, that makes so much sense, because I always feel like I got to be doing the next thing. That what happens if I stop? I don't want to know.
Yeah. No, I get it. Even when you're on vacation, it's like I'm like, okay, I got 3 books. I'm gonna finish these before I get out of here. It's like, God, am I? You know, it's like, and even you know, I'll stack things. You know, there's a great book, Atomic Habits, man. If you guys
Atomic Habits
talks about stacking your habits. So everything I do, I try to optimize my time. Like because so I'll have a calendar. I say, okay, even if everything's written out for me, like I a little app on my phone. So 4:30, wake up, get my coffee, meditate.
6 o'clock, call Jeremy.
Yeah, 6 o'clock. I'm like, he's one of the few guys I can call at 6 a.m. I'm like, bro, hey, what's going on? You know, it's my 3rd cup of coffee, but like, if not, I'll be like on the road running.
Yeah.
Right? Listen to audiobook. And so I'll try to do 1 or 2 books a week. And just you know, there's a saying in Spanish, me quiero comer el mundo. Like, I want to just devour the world. And so, you know, and I do a lot of self-help, but, you know, I'm trying to stay away from just concentrating on that, but I'm just doing just some fun stuff, you know, listening to books like The Alchemist, which I recommend as well. But a lot of those books have some parallels with I don't know. Alchemist was great. There's so many books, man. I don't know. This is probably this last year. I don't know how many I've read, or listened to. But point is, I feel like there's so little time on this world, right? And that I want to try to do everything I can to just fulfill myself.
Racing the clock. Yeah. I don't even know how many episodes I've probably talked about that with. Is I feel like I'm in competition with time. And like I said before, it's not a commodity you can buy more of or get a refund on it once spent. And, you know, you can't put more hours on the day. But I just feel like, man, I gotta race the clock. I gotta do more. I gotta be more. And even when Laura, like our wives, bless them.
Yeah.
Right. Who just look at us and go, why can't you just relax? And I think for me, I'm scared to relax because I wouldn't know what to do. I don't know what that means. Like, I wouldn't know what to do with that. You know, I want to occupy that time. Like, I want to read a book. You know, I want to do something. It's this constant, no, I feel like I got to go do something. Mm-hmm. But you and I we're rounding the corner for not being young chickens anymore. I know. I mean, Father Time and Mother Nature get their pound of flesh sooner or later, right?
Exactly.
And when that happens, and I think that's been the difficult thing that I've faced more so in the last couple of years, is man, the wear and tear on my body it's catching up, right? I mean, when my feet touch the floor in the morning, it hurts. It's reality of what it is, right?
Yeah.
And I've never feared death, right? Death is the last thing in the world. And I've said this on other podcasts is, when it's time when the man upstairs has decided it's time for your ticket to get punched, that was decided long before the day you were born. Mm-hmm. So you got no control over that. So I don't really worry about that, but I worry about being insignificant, right? Not leaving a legacy, not doing something, not because I want anybody to read some great story about what I did or didn't do or anything else. It's just this, man, like I would say if somebody was going to ask me, like, what is the worst absolute thing that could happen to me is getting dementia or Alzheimer's, mm-hmm. right? I mean, material things are material things. I've made money, made a lot of it, lost a lot of it, and made it back again. I mean, you could take away all the things that I have. You could rip my class ring off my finger. That wouldn't change the fact that I sat through those classrooms and I got that education, that experience. You can rip my wedding band off my hand, and guess what? It doesn't change the fact that on May 26th each year, I honor the day that I said, I clearly got the better deal here with my wife as we celebrate our anniversary.
Yeah.
And which is funny because for being the female in the relationship, she can never remember. She's like, is it the 25th, 26th, or 27th, right?
Oh, wow. Wow, yeah.
I guess that's what happened when you get married a second time, right? If my first time or second time, she's just like, well, you're still around. You haven't gone anywhere. So, I mean, you're going to remind me whatever day it is. But it's just that constant ticking that's just sitting there. And on one hand, it's the very thing that has helped be the driver of success. But on the other hand, it's also my kryptonite, right? It's that whole, what's a blessing is a curse and what's a curse is a blessing, right?
Yeah.
And so I wonder about that, and especially as,
So yeah, I don't know. I think that, the thing about it is, it definitely, if you channel that energy, some people can look at that and say, I'm determined for failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've got this flaw. You can't do this, can't do that. I'm just gonna, it's predetermined for me, right? I'll give up. But if you channel that energy, right? If you channel that, the whatever inadequacy, the failure, just kind of focus in on that, then you can channel it to some success, right?
Yeah.
But being able to recognize, like, okay, this is what ticks, like this is what makes me move, and this is what maybe I should. But being able to kind of like think about it in retrospect and say, okay, Rudy, you don't have to do everything you want. You don't have to shoot for everything, right? You're gonna fail. It's okay, but I don't know if that's the root of my motivation, or could just because why not? Let me just see if I can.
Yeah.
But for me, it may or may not. I don't feel incompetent. I don't feel in any way, shape, or form inadequate when I'm, talking to other people or colleagues in my field. I feel pretty confident. But I mean, I think it's just being able to using those failures and channeling those failures into something successful. Mm-hmm. And I think that honestly, I feel like I have two little boys. I have a 6 and an 8-year-old, right? And very precocious, super bright kids, right? Like they're very bright, but everyone says
they're sweet kids too, man. They're good kids.
Yeah,
your boys are awesome.
That's all mom, man. I can't take any credit for that. But point is this: that they have everything they could ever want, right? Been to around the world, been to Africa multiple times, been traveled all over, right? But I fear that the giving everything to your kids is going to set them back. Like I almost want them to fail. I want them to be like some sort of have some sort of deficit, right? Like, I don't know, because it helps them, earlier on to say, hey, I'm not the brightest, I'm not the sharpest, but let me figure out and put my head to it and figure this out. I don't know, they're still young, but because there's a lot of guys that I met along the way in high school and undergrad. They're super competent, very bright, really high IQs, but they're working for, I don't know. I don't want to say anything, So I think that as long as we channel stuff, it's going to be fine, man.
So that fear that you have, man, I've experienced that lately. I wanted to provide our daughter with everything that I never had. To the point of, like, I want you to go to college. I want you to have a college experience, So I make the joke when people say, oh, what's she majoring in? I'm like, having a good time, But when the pandemic hit, right? And this was always kind of riding on me, even from when she was little, is, have I done enough to prepare her for this world? Because what you and I know as grown men is the world is not a nice, friendly place. It is harder to do the right thing every time. Mm-hmm. It is harder to be a better person and a good person, because being a slacker and doing the wrong things and screwing over people, that's easy to do. That's the easy stuff to do. And I wanted to protect her from that. And then realizing, God, did I do her any favors by that? And then, but you're sitting there like, well, it's college, I'll figure it out, and hoping that she will. And then the pandemic hits, where, a number of daisy chains of other things have occurred in the current political environment, in the protest and rioting environments, or as I can keep repeating myself to say, is the post-pandemic rioting, protesting, election year trifecta of 2020. Like, nothing, I'm afraid to say nothing else could go wrong, because I'm sure something massively more could go wrong. But I was driving back to Colorado, because, I split my time back and forth, and come here, work in the business, I go there, I'll work on the business, and back and forth. And I've got 5 people in my advisory group that I depend on to just have unpopular conversations with, because I know I'm not going to get judged, and I can get their feedback. And these are smart folks that are going to help me see perspective and clarity on it. And so I was talking to my buddy John Lee, who does my insurance too. And as I'm driving down the highway on my way back to Colorado, I found myself just screaming at the phone for 5 minutes. He hasn't said a word. You okay? I was like, I just realized why I'm so angry with my daughter right now. Is because I'm scared. I'm terrified. And being angry was just the vessel of it, right? And I was really just annoyed on the simple things. Like, wait a minute, you can go off to college and you make your bed and you wash your dishes and do all that stuff, but then you come here and you just wreck my house when you come back into it, right?
Yeah.
I've become an empty nester. Now you're back here, not to your fault. You have a small list of things to do, like pick up the dog crap outside, fill the bird feeders, make sure the cat box is empty. Not difficult. Make sure the trash is going out, right? I mean, nothing major, and none of that's getting done. I'm like, what? Why can't you do these things? And I'm angry. And then I just realized, I was on the phone with John. He's like, are you all right? And I was like, man, it just hit me. I'm terrified right now. Terrified I haven't done all the right things. Did I spend more time protecting my daughter instead of preparing my daughter? And all those things. And parenting doesn't come with a guidebook, right? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter what we do that we think we're doing it right. We're probably screwing it up anyways, right?
Yeah.
And so when that dawned on me, I was like, man. And so when I saw her, I said, hey, I just want to apologize. I said, I've been angry with you for a long time, but it turns out I wasn't angry. I was just terrified. And here's why. Is you've now entered this world, and the pandemic has helped highlight that things don't always go according to plan, right? I mean, it's important to have goals. Plans are, let's talk about our TCU properties, right?
Oh, no joke.
Wow. I mean,
yeah.
I'm the subject matter expert in this stuff, and then I have had to make some uncomfortable phone calls to you to be like, So you see what happened was, and just, I missed a lot of things.
Yeah.
Now, learning from those, won't miss those ever again. But it does get frustrating when they're financially costing us to do this, and I'm just sitting there going, God, how bad did I screw this up? How could I have missed this? Like, what am I missing here? What is going on? I mean, they're not collapsing financially by any means. They're just not as profitable as we wanted to be because of all these other things we didn't know about all along the way. Plumbing and HVACs were, and as you know, we have several properties, and two of them are right next to each other.
Yes.
Where one house has been a challenge, and the other has been incredibly great to deal with. And yes, both properties have had some issues, and we've done everything we can to jump all over them. But even when I talked to the tenants before they became tenants, as I said, look, how I treat you is going to be based on how you treat me. And I've earned my respect in this world. And as long as you're respectful towards me, I will absolutely do everything I can possible. And as we learned, they weren't. You know, some nasty little emails and threats and false accusations of, you didn't do this. And I'm like, screenshot. You remember the email, right?
Yeah,
that had all the screenshots and the documentation like, hey, buddy, I can tell right now that your mom's a lawyer and wrote this, or one of your parents is a lawyer and wrote this. Maybe you should share this email because it sounds like you told your parents only one side of the story of everything we have done, right? And of course, we saw it shut it down right away.
Yeah.
And where we were able to get most of our properties to do 2-year leases, naturally along the way, we just figured these two were probably not going to renew, right? And you just accept it. You go, okay, well, we'll do what we can, and we'll get new tenants in there, and we'll do everything we can. And remember when I texted you the other day, and I said, hey, do you want to hear something that's going to brighten your day? And then, so here's what I wanted to relate to you is, we're doing it right. You and I are doing it right with these properties, and here's why. The tenant's in the good property. The main tenant I talked to in there, they're in a group thread, but he's the main one that coordinates everything, says, hey, can I call you? Yeah, sure. Give me a holler. And said, hey, when we originally got these properties is because, they're party houses, right? They have the shared yards and can throw the parties and do whatever it is that college kids are doing nowadays. And he said, we are pretty certain that the friends of ours that are next to us are going to go find somewhere else to live. And if we don't know the guys next door, then we really don't want to stay. And I said, completely understandable. And I appreciate your patience through everything. He goes, oh, no, I'm calling to see if you have any other properties. We don't want to live in anybody else's properties.
Wow.
We want to live in a MyTCU property. They said, look, we get it. This house, it's had some issues. But he said, y'all have been great to deal with. Y'all jump all over it. You do everything. And I said, yeah. And I said, man, it really makes me feel good to hear that because your neighbors next door, your buddies have been real challenging. And he was like, yeah. I mean, they're boys, so he's not going to cut it up. But you could just tell he was like, it sounded like, I might misinterpret it, but it sounded like they knew, they realized that. And I said, actually, I do. I got a vacant one right now. And, it's got a lockbox on it. Go over there and take a look at it right now. I would love to have you guys here because they've been fantastic to deal with. And that's when I knew you and I were doing it right. Even though the structure of the properties have had some challenges and really only one set of tenants were challenges. The rest of them are like, yeah, we love living in your property.
Yeah, I know. And I got to give credit totally to you on that deal because I would have, this is PG or.
You can say whatever you want, brother.
I would have lost my shit with those guys. I would have lost my shit because I would have been like, dude, the ghetto would have came out. But you handle it very well. And my hat's off to you because you've been awesome with that deal. I would love to. Yeah, I try to call you back, but it's either 5:30 or 6 a.m. before we get a hold of each other. But it was ultimately we knew those properties that we would have to tear them down and rebuild.
Right.
We've got bigger projects, bigger ideas for that location. But that's awesome.
And then even further, I just said, man, I totally get it. And I said, look, I know you guys wanted this as a party house, and naturally they had some issues, and we're trying to do as much as we can. I mean, we have blown past the budget that we had to do for CapEx stuff, like way past it, right? And I said, but the other ones are good. I mean, this other one we had that new electrical service put on it, had the new HVAC compressor, and I was like, these are much, much better properties. And he's like, oh yeah, no, we just want to live in one of your guys' properties. He goes, just in case one of these don't fit, do you have any more? And I was like, no, we don't. I was like, everybody else signed 2-year leases. But it was just, that was a warm feeling to get that. And I just said, and he goes, well, I know
we got some homework tonight. Let's go find some.
So he said, well, I know that you talked about, maybe tearing these down. And I said, yeah, I've learned in the last couple of weeks, there's some politics we're going to have to navigate before we do that. So it's probably going to be a few more seasons before that gets to happen. And he goes, oh, well, hey man, we got some sophomores that are looking for a place that are in our fraternity. What if I put them in here? And I was like,
dude,
what? I was like, dude, you get that whole thing filled out. And I figured you would have totally been okay with this. I was like, I'll put $1,000 in your pocket if you get those guys to sign a new lease.
I'll give them a paid vacation to South Padre.
Yeah. Hey, they would probably love that. But I was just like,
we need to buy a condo down there.
Yeah, you got a condo down there?
No, we need to get one.
Oh, we can do that too.
Yeah,
we can absolutely do that. Yeah. And we could make it an income property. But between you and I, we'll probably be down there all the damn time. I'd be like, well, we're not making any money. Why? Because we're spending all our time down here. But I was like, that's when I was like, you know what? And you and I talked about it in the beginning. It's like, hey, listen, if we're going to buy properties and we're going to do this, we're going to do this right. You know?
For sure.
And that was you trusting me, right? And me trusting you is that trust allowed that to happen. Where now the results on this, here it is. Let's see, this thing closed at the end of March, so April, May, June, July, August, September. So we're 6 months into it, and tenants are like, no, we want to stay in your property.
So Jeremy, let me share this with you, right? So we've both been burned. Like I've lost lots of money, trusted guys. Even recently, I could go on and on. But for me, it's about consistency and following through. Follow through, right? Like these little things, whether it's, hey, I'll be there at this time, or, don't flake on me, and you've consistently shown that with me. And so, when you ask me, say, hey, we got to put some money down on this house, like, okay, I trust you. We've looked at this. Let's go.
Yeah.
That first property we bought, hey, we want to buy it. I'll wire the money. But for me, it's about consistency. And if there's little things that I've noticed, even with my attorneys that I just fired, right? Like, you didn't follow through with this. You said you're going to do 4 or 5 things. And that means a lot to me, right? And so one of the things I've learned in this process of kind of the entrepreneurship, right, is if you see fat, cut it, right? If you see fat, let's just don't waste any time.
Yeah.
Is that when you think about firing somebody, that's when you should fire somebody.
Yep. Don't put any more thought into it.
So I think for me, I've learned, the converse of what to do with bad people is you extrapolate that, right, and say, this is what good people look like. And that's where, I've gleaned from my interaction with so many bad people. It's like, man, they don't follow through. They're full of shit. And this guy has sent me emails, threads of like just lawyer-like, meticulous note-taking with these tenants. I'm like, dude, this is a guy I need on my team. That's why I was like, hands down, let's do it. And so that's kind of where my trust has evolved. Do we hang out? Man, we just met. When did we meet? Like literally.
Coming up on a year ago. I think it was October last year.
And it
was October. Yep.
Yeah,
it was October last year.
I think Eric introduced us, and I'm like, okay, this guy.
You were looking at a multifamily up in Denton, and I took one look at the financials and said, hey, Bubba.
And then we looked at the BRRRR strategy, and I knew about it. And like, I'm not a really big single family, but this is really like a multifamily because we got one house, and you got 5 guys in there paying
per head,
right? Per door. So it's really
and
like
it's mom and dad paying, so that's good money coming in.
So TC is not going anywhere. So
Right.
I think we got a great strategy, but I think for me, it's like trusting people that follow through.
Yeah.
And that's the key.
And man, for me, what it did, and Laura's made this comment several times. She goes, man, I'm really, really happy that, because not only whenever I approached you and said, hey man, what do you think about partnering up on this? And then, even when the wives even heard it, because they've seen the results of previous partnerships, right?
Yeah.
And the wives were like, well, hey, before you do this. And then I was like, yeah, but I was like, in my mind, it was I've always, just like when I sat in your kitchen with you and your wife, as I said, I'm a guy that's got to carry a flag, right? In the Marine Corps, I carry the American flag. In PD, I carry the Texas and City of Fort Worth flag. And that's what my search has been for, is I've got to have, part of my purpose in life is I've got to have something that I can fight for. And the time gap between there, and don't get me wrong, because I'm not taking anything away from me and my wife being partners and doing the real estate stuff, which I do a whole podcast series on how incredible it's been. That's my wife too, right? I trust her. Naturally, she's my wife. She's going to look after our interests and everything else. But that major burn I had from in between the PD and there, where I thought I was carrying another flag for an unnamed company, that burned me to the point of to the point where I had lost all the money, and I was holding a bag for $4 million in assets. I mean, whoa. And part of the, I guess you could say, putting it to rest was being able to find, I needed to be able to find it. I didn't realize this actually as much as I did till you and I had met, and didn't even realize it as much until we got to TCU properties and going on with that. Was what I really needed in my life was, I've seen so much bad, right? Between the Marine Corps and the PD and working violence, sex crimes, and everything else. I'd seen so much bad that I just needed to believe that there was still good in this world. And that there is at least one person outside of my wife that I could go trust. And that's what it became. So it was less about the partnership, less about money, less about anything else. I was just like, oh no, I remember sitting in your kitchen. I was like, man, I'm almost not even gonna give you a choice. Like, I have to do this with you. Like, this is making me re-believe that there is good in this world. Right. So when Eric got married last Friday,
Amen.
And I married him.
Yeah. Congrats.
I did it. And one of the things I said during the ceremony is, because this is on 9/11, I said, in what I call that post-pandemic rioting, protesting, election year trifecta, and on a day that reminds us that 19 years ago we were attacked and we've been at war, this marriage here today is a reminder that good can still happen. Two people who love each other can still come together, right? And it's funny is, even as many times as taking it on the chin on stuff, I still need to believe that there is still good in this world, right? Because I've got a very grotesque view of, all the things that we naturally see. So it was really funny. And I tell Eric all the time, I was like, man, the biggest solid you ever did for me was introduce me to Rudy. And I love it, man, because when we do our 6 a.m. talks, and I'll have people go, yeah, so when you talk with at 6 a.m., they're like, can I call you at 6 a.m.? And I said, look, first off, I know you're not up at 6 a.m., so that ain't going to happen. And two, you're going to have to go through some serious, but it's just, that's why, I was really excited for you to be, some of the very first guests on here, is because to tell the story of you grew up with immigrant parents that, man, couldn't rub two nickels together to make a dime, to medical school, to successful entrepreneur, to just everything, beautiful wife, great kids. I mean, man, you're just, pretty charmed life that as everybody else gets to see the results of all the hard work, but they would go, oh, I want to go do that, but they don't realize, hey, wait a minute, let me tell you about all the brain damage that goes behind all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Get all that, right?
Yeah, no, it's kind of hard to look back, at all the stuff that maybe you go through, but yeah, I mean, I just kind of always look forward. I always kind of move in that forward direction, but yeah, I don't know how to respond to that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, but I don't know. One thing for me, it's like I've always been kind of a quiet, introverted type of guy. I'd never been like very demonstrative or extroverted with, I proclaim that, some people have to write, all this and almost tell people that you're doing these things kind of puts you on the hook, because then you have to do it. But for me, it's just like a quiet, focused, tunnel vision to accomplish your goals. I don't really think back on, oh, I did this or did that, because it's kind of a vague memory.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I guess if I sit down and look at my memory bank of, studying all night and whatever the case was, but man, I'm just grateful, blessed, and I'm glad that I met you, and glad we're working on some real estate together. And that's kind of what I want to channel my money into assets, and I'm glad that I met you, and we can do this together for sure, man.
Yeah. So the last question I like to ask everybody at the end of every one of these is, and again, I know there's probably 50,000 things you could answer in this, but what is the one takeaway you have where you are in life that if you could go back to 22-year-old self and say, you're not going to listen to anything else, here's one thing, just do this or don't do this or whatever that thing is, what would you tell 22-year-old Rudy if you could turn back the hands of time and go, this one thing, if you just do this, your life will be significantly better, different, suck less, whatever, if you had to have that one thing?
Man, it's a good question. I wish I would have thought about that. I think for me, it would be, when you second guess yourself or doubt yourself, don't do that. You're competent. You can do it. And with that, don't always think small. Think big. For me, it would be, don't second guess yourself. If you think you can do it, you can do it. And it's okay to fail, right? Along with that, there's a lot of, nuances with that, but I feel like you're going to screw up, you're going to mess up, but you can do it.
Yeah. So the reason I was smiling at Aaron was, so we've recorded 11 episodes, 13 total people between all 11. There was 3 brothers that were on one, and so I had the math up. And one of the things that has become really exciting about this, that same question I have asked 13 people now, not one person has given the same answer.
Interesting.
I mean, that's being true, honest, candid, because no one's going to know you like you know you at 22 versus you yourself where you're at, and to be able to go back in time, that's just hearing a real answer. And I was joking with Aaron on the last episode, is I was like, we almost should title these things, what would I tell myself at 22? Because none of them would have the same titles. Now, I know eventually we're going to do enough of these. There's going to be some that you're going to naturally that are going to overlap, but so far not.
Yeah, I know. That's the first thing that came to my head, but I think there's probably lots of different things that you could tell yourself, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm interested to see what the other podcasts casters have to say is their what they would tell themselves at 22 or 21.
So if I had to go back, since this is the last one before we do our next set of recordings many weeks from now, if I had to go back and tell 22-year-old self something, and my answer is different from everybody else's too, is treat your body better than you have. Treat your body like a temple, not a septic tank. You being a doctor, and that's why it just also seems fitting, is just felt I was made of Teflon and indestructible, and I could do whatever, eat whatever, drink whatever, punish myself, whatever, thrash myself, whatever. Hey, watch this, hold my beer, watch this, whatever.
Yeah.
And then be able to go back to 22-year-old self and go, hey, look, I could give you an Encyclopedia Britannica full of stupid things you should not do and things you should go do. But if you just listen to one thing, take better care of your body. Because when you hit, like I am, getting real close to 50, 22-year-old self, if they could have a preview into current Jeremy, would go, oh shit, I really need to pay attention to this because this sounds like this is going to hurt later.
Yeah.
Everything from, hey, when you've been out with, you go and you entertain clients all the time, hey, maybe not always drink. Or, hey, even though you're traveling all the time for work, maybe don't always go to every meal with clients. Go eat something healthy. Still go exercise or do something, because the body is what's going to show the results of how you've treated it decade after decade, right?
No, for sure. This goes back to, it's what I tell patients, right? I'm big into discipline, right? Like discipline will give you freedom. One of the biggest things for me is being like, what is the hardest thing that you can do? What do you think? For me is fasting. There's so many health benefits with fasting, right? With stem cell production, autophagy, basically recycling your cells, reducing inflammation. But for me, one of the things that has helped me kind of stay lean as possible is just fasting. Like my wife and I will do a 2-day fast or 3-day fast or intermittent fasting. But that's been beneficial. And I think that even if you're closer to 50, you can totally change your body by just practicing that one simple thing, right? If you're on an airplane and all they have is pretzels and, whatever, it's like, man, I won't eat that. I'll just fast.
Yeah.
It's not eat. It's easier.
Yeah.
But it also parallels, like that parallel of like, if I can do this, then I can do that.
Yeah.
Right? So if I can master and discipline my ability to not eat, even though you have hunger pains and whatever, then you can master anything, right?
Yeah.
But there's so many health benefits with it, being more fat adaptive and metabolizing fat much more efficiently than carbohydrates. Man, that's one thing I tell my patients. Like, if you want to look younger, stay fitter, and have less wrinkles, just fast. Because it reduces that milieu, that soupy, inflammatory soup that you have, that will help with just looking younger.
Really?
Yeah.
So I've done the intermittent fasting before, and it was very, very effective. And it was funny is when I got into doing intermittent fasting, it was because I was probably doing it already because I get so hyper-focused on what I'm doing that I will look up and it's already 3 o'clock, and I'm like, damn it. Mm-hmm. Right? And so just keeping it to that window that...
keeping that window with super nutrient-dense foods, like, not that pizza, not the hot dog from Sonic, or, the freaking, chili dog from QT. I'm not saying that you do that, but I think that, I think that's just key with, and that's a simple thing you can do. And there's so many other diets I'm a proponent of, like Mediterranean diet and things like that. But man, it's like takes the thinking out of eating. Yeah. So let's go to some beers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with that note, let's go get a steak and a beer. So, and this is what I always like to leave people with is also a platform to promote whatever they're doing. Naturally, mytcuproperty.com. If you have a student that goes to TCU that needs a place, we're going to put all this on the website and everything else, and I'll push it on our social media for the properties. But is there anything in the doctor world with your practices, a website or anything?
Yeah, we've got Your Family Medical, familymedical.com. I'll send you the links. And then Comprehensive Pain Institute is my practice. And we've got two locations, one in Benbrook and one in Bedford. And then we'll have one in Louisville as well in the near future. So we have, comprehensive pain, which basically deals with mostly pain, all the pain syndromes. That's where I cut my teeth, and that's where I treat patients. But, we have Your Family Medical, which is mostly geared for internal medicine, adult medicine, male and female. We've got some providers that work for us that want to treat people like family and take care of people.
Yeah. So, well, and then that's what we're going to do. We're going to not only, for people downloading this on both YouTube and for the podcast, but we're going to have it on the website. So that way anybody that needs any sort of direction, they can go there and
thank you.
See where, absolutely, man. It's the least I can do for you giving me a couple hours out of your day. I know you're a busy man. I know you're always busy.
Thank you, man.
So thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing.
Yes,
man,
sir.
There's a lot of people out there that will, our target audience is high performers. And high performers, hearing your story, that's what's key here, right? That shows them, look, success, it doesn't just fall off a tree, And like you said, fall forward into it, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Thank
I appreciate you coming.
Okay. Thank you.